yet they have real-world application that can really make a change in people's lives. You have others that are doing synthetic biology work, and they may be working on a very specific part that goes on top of a cell, on top that connects to another part. But in the broader sense, it has this application to the greater good, so that you can assemble cells in a way that is going to, help create photosynthetic systems. So I think by meaningful, it has meaning to the most number of people, whether it's the researcher who's laser focused on what's going on in the dish, or whether it's the student on campus, the anthropologist who is interested in how these things happen and if they're happening in an interesting way, or the woman walking down the street who is curious how to improve the diagnosis for her grandmother in the hospital. So meaningful work is work that has some weight with a number of different groups. To me.
So this is going to get, I feel like we should be having, we talked about all these blogger heads. I think honestly what needs to happen eventually is Paul just needs to be a blogger head with a bunch of people, because I'm sure he would have a better way of asking the question I'm about to ask, because I'm just, when we speak of the greater good, or of
eudaimonia, is that what Paul calls it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And of a benefiting society.
Yeah.
What do you think decides what that is, or who decides what benefiting society is?
So to place a sort of definition on, well, let me say it a different way. So I don't really know who decides who places value on things in general. Something that has value to the developed world certainly isn't the same thing as something that has value to the developing world. This kind of goes back to the idea of what's meaningful, and one of the things that attracts me to synthetic biology is that it's broad enough that you can tackle problems on different scales, and by extension I think that you can have value in a lot of different areas. And so for example, you can create systems using synthetic biology that can detect arsenic in well water, and that's not very valuable for people living in California maybe, but in sub-Saharan Africa it probably would be of very great value. So another way that I think synthetic biology creates value at a lot of different levels is because it's somewhat democratic and open source in nature. So if there is a fledgling synthetic biology lab in Africa that can benefit from these kind of high level, the foundational work that is going on, and can go to the registry and and that enables them to create value within their own country or their own community, then you get multiples of value that way. So I think that value is in the eye of the beholder, and I think it's mostly local. There certainly economic value, some practical economic value that we're doing here locally. And there are certainly ways in which we want to make biology accessible, biological engineering useful and practicable for everybody, for the common good.
How do you think this idea of value being local interacts with the main game plan of organizations like JVA and UBI who are trying to create a mass-produced, large-scale product that will affect a lot of people?
Yeah. So this idea of value being local and how it might relate to, say, a large-scale project to produce biofuels. I think that in some sense we're talking, I think I would think of that as the global community. Sure, we're going to create value in Emeryville if we can churn out millions of gallons of cellulosic ethanol or some other biofuel in the next 10, 15, 20 years. But that also benefits or has value to the developing world, hopefully. If California turns out to be the vanguard for biofuels and can create the basic research that is needed to pursue these industrial paradigms elsewhere in the world, then we're still providing kind of remote value or value in a different area. I think it's incumbent upon us here in California, in the United States, at UC Berkeley, within Synberg, to take what we know and try to build on it rather than just depend on some vague notion that there'll always be wealth around us. I think we have to sort of push the boundaries a little bit more than we have in order to, sure, create value for ourselves, but also think about how that might translate to value for the rest of the world. So, and I think that the developing world can certainly avoid some of the missteps that the U.S. and the rest of the developed world have taken on the way to these highly industrialized and highly developed states.
Okay. I'm going to end with that one then and try another one.
Okay. These big ones are hard.
I know they are. I don't know how I'd answer them. Alright, so the next one was very vaguely, what are the limits of what you can design? So in this whole scheme of synthetic biology being theoretically the engineering of novel biological systems, how far can that go? At what point? I mean, what are the limits of being able to design novel organisms?
Yeah. So in terms of what are the limits of what we can design, I think, it's a difficult question because I don't think that we can even imagine what the limits are. There's probably not an answer to that question that I could conceive. If you ask somebody 50 years ago, what do you think are the limits of sort of Mendelian genomics? I don't think genomics was a word then. But what are the limits of the car? I think that they couldn't possibly. Well, in some ways they might not have guessed some of the innovations that we've come up with. In other ways, they might have thought that we were in flying saucers by now. So, I think that I think in practical terms there are probably no real limits, and that what we perceive as a limit today